a live show host as well. He's a multiple-time Super Bowl champion. Ladies and gentlemen, Paisano extraordinaire, Michael Lombardi.
Yeah.
What's up, Jim?
Hey, how'd the TED Talk come together? They sent you an email and said, hey, you're an expert. We want to hear you talk about it. Is that how that goes?
I got a phone call from a speaking bureau, and it said, since you're writing a book, would you be interested in doing a TED Talk? And I thought, yeah, how hard could that be? I think it's the hardest thing you do because you can't use a PowerPoint. You have to memorize it. It's like Hamlet, to be or not to be. You got to go in there and you got to memorize every word. I was a nervous wreck. It was hard. It was really hard, and you got to stay in that little circle. You can't move, and you can't use the PowerPoint to help direct your conversation. And then you're looking at this giant clock because you only have 14 minutes, and you better get it all in, or else they're going to cut you off.
Is it your crowd, or is it a crowd that's just there for a speaker? Like, did they know you?
No, nobody. I don't think any. No, there were like 16 speakers. It was up in Santa Barbara in a theater, and it was full. The place was packed, and every speaker, there must have been 16 of us. They were all going through it, and everybody was waiting. You're rehearsing your speech. You're doing a Broadway play, and it was like, writing it out. I was a wreck. I mean, I went and had 2 Jack Daniels after that. I was like, okay, this is it. This is really hard.
You could think about doing the Jack Daniels beforehand too. Might have been frowned upon.
I did. I thought about it, but then I thought I would slur my words. But so I just I waited until afterwards, and I couldn't wait to run to the bar because it was hard, but it was fun to do. I'd do it again. It just was. You had to be really good, and you had to practice a lot. There was a lot of practice in it.
Well, congrats. Not a lot of people get to do TED Talks. So, And once again, you said you'd do it again. I think it's dead. I think you would do it on a podcast, and then it would hopefully get shared, and then people would put music behind it, and then they'd have reenactment behind it, and then it would be that's a whole thing. That's the whole world now, but we're all smarter for it, especially because of what you do every single week with us. We're very grateful for that. Feels like there's another great Thursday night football game. This feels like another great football game. This has been happening now, Lombo. There's been a lot of good games happening on Thursday night. Remember, Jeff Bezos has a lot of money. Amazon has a lot of money. They invested a lot of money. There was a couple times there, a couple years there where it was dud, and you knew the NFL was going to try to make it up, seemingly, and you can never project injuries and everything like that, which will be a topic of tonight's conversation. But these games have been great, and tonight's a huge one in the NFC North. We mention injuries because I think it's very vital for the conversation about this Lions team. How long can they survive with the amount of injuries they have to their front seven on the defensive side? I know MCDC, phenomenal coach. We have sang his praises. We love the mentality. We love the culture. But in the history of the NFL, good teams end up losing because of injuries.
Yeah.
That is normally what happens. How worried are you about the Lions being able to manage this, and how do you think tonight goes?
Well, I think it's hard, and not on that list because he's not on IR is DJ Reader, who may not play tonight.
No, he's out tonight, I think.
He's out tonight. That's another one there. They're just going to have, and Pascal, the other defensive lineman, he's out too. So they have 2 defensive linemen to go along with guys that are on that list. It's really mounting. I mean, look, I think Philadelphia and Detroit are the class of the NFL. Forget the AFC or NFC. I think those are the 2 best teams, and they kind of mirror one another. Right. It's fascinating that we live in the NFL where everybody talks about being in an RPO game, being in shotgun. But these 2 teams are under center, Philadelphia. They are in some shotgun, but they lead the league in rushing attempts, and they're in the bottom of the league in passing attempts. But where they really excel is yards per attempt passing. So when they do decide to throw the ball, they just don't check it down. They get it down the field. And add Green Bay to that list. Green Bay is the number 1 team in the National Football League in first half play calling. They're going to run the ball more than they're going to throw it. And they're in the top 5 in those 2 categories that I mentioned. But I think, to me, Detroit loses out a little bit because these injuries, they can become replaceable. But the depth, as we saw in the fourth quarter of that game on Thanksgiving, it wears you down. All of a sudden, you start losing players, and now your backups go from playing 10 plays to playing 30 plays, and they're not as effective. That's what worries you. Detroit, to me, is going to be a tough out, whether they have to go on the road in the playoffs or if they play at home, if they're healthy. But if they're not, it becomes harder.
I didn't even think about potential injuries to guys that are filling in tonight, like the tonight starters getting banged up. Then you got actual 5th stringers now.
Yeah.
playing very
Well, they're
meaningful.
signing guys, Pat. They're signing guys off the practice squad. They signed a guy off the practice squad from the Rams. They signed one from Seattle. They brought in Jamal Adams, who they're going to probably play at linebacker. They claimed David Long off the waiver wire from. I mean, they're trying to patchwork this together, and it's hard. It's not easy.
I'd like to say, on that note, Lumbo, we'd like to say phenomenal coaching job over there.
Sure.
Definitely.
By
No question.
Aaron Glenn and all the Kelvin Shepard, who's former teammate of mine, is the linebacker coach over there. They got a lot of great coaches over there on the defensive side of the ball. It's like this is not a shot at coaching being able to figure it out. This is just like how many humans that aren't on NFL rosters can you plug into an NFL roster and still win NFL games? Like that's like the game in this entire thing.
And Aaron Glenn said about the new guys, he said, I'm not worried about the playbook. It's more about the style of play. I need them to play Detroit Lions football. And as a fan, I absolutely love that.
And I think it speaks to the culture in their locker room too. They have tremendous culture, and the veteran players take over. I think you see that in Detroit. You can feel it that they take over. And look, with the other injury we didn't mention is Taylor Decker. He's not going to play left tackle tonight. Now there was some talk that they were going to move Sewell over to left tackle. I think that would be a mistake because I think you'd be better off just keeping the big fella at right tackle and running the ball behind him so well that they do. And not try to change. And you can game plan around Skipper at left tackle. You know you got to chip.
Yep.
You know you've got to make sure that if you want to throw it down the field, you're going to have to give them some help. So these injuries have taken a toll. And look, Green Bay has injuries too. Jair Alexander is not going to go. Dobbs still has the concussion. They have the same issues too. But one thing we do know about Green Bay, besides the fresh haircut that Matt LaFleur is going to give us tonight, and it's going to be sensational, we know that, is he's really good in the month of December. I mean, he is really good. And where Matt LaFleur is really good, too, is when he's a 3-point or less dog. He's got Mike Tomlin-like numbers in that category, and you can't overlook it.
We all owe LaFleur, flowers. LaFleur's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We do. We owe him his LaFleur's because I think we all wondered, and by we, it's us, that we are into microphones. But now after you watch this, like the consistency, they're 9-3 right now. That is a very, very good record. Very good record. Now, they're in the Lions division, so it's not. They're in the Vikings division, so it's like, is it that? 9-3, basically any other division, you're in a great spot. Shout out to LaFleur doing his thing. And to your point about the Lions and the Eagles, and you talk about their running, and then you mentioned that the Packers also first half when it comes to running. I got a stat from Hembo about the Philadelphia Eagles in their running. Here's an element for Philly during this win streak. They've stuck to their identity. When trailing the Philadelphia Eagles, their run-pass ratio is 52% run to 48% pass, even when they're trailing. That's obviously incredible discipline by Kellen Moore, but that's also them not getting caught up in what they got caught up in last year, right? Lombo,
Right.
do you think that's the case?
That's exactly what it is. They know who they are. And think about this. Let's add something more to this, right? They also, in the last 5 games that they've won, they've outgained running than passing. They've gained more yards on the ground than they have throwing the football 5 consecutive weeks in a row. So for all the talk about, well, you can't run the ball, running's a waste of time, they've proven this point. But here's where it gets more interesting. I think to me, and Chuck can verify this, teams that can run the ball in the red zone, inside the 30, it's the best way to score, right? The way to get in the end zone is through ground transportation, right? It's the best way to score. And this team is really good. Philadelphia is the number 1 team in rushing inside the 30. Detroit's number 2. And then you've got to be able to stop teams from running the ball when they get in the end zone. That's the signature of a really good team. Philadelphia is the 4th best team in that area. Detroit's 5th. So those two things always go hand in hand. And then let's take the opposite, Cincinnati, who doesn't want to run the ball, who has no interest in running the football, can't stop the run, nor can they run. And then they can't run when they get down the end zone, and then they make mistakes.
Yeah, run game is coming back into style. That running back market and everybody was talking about, and the wide receiver market was through the roof. Now it feels like that's about to
football.
The next couple of years feels like the run game. Offensive linemen, I think, are about to get paid a little bit more from their teams if they instead of letting them go. Let's finish up on the Philadelphia Eagles here. Here's some more stats from Hembo. In 2023, the Eagles had the number 7 scoring offense and the number 30 scoring defense. In 2024, they have the number 7 scoring offense and the 4th scoring defense. So that's the difference.
You know why that is, Pat? Let me tell you why that is. Vic's done a great job, but they're in condition. Look at their defensive line. Jalen Carter's playing most every play. Last year, they were like a hockey line. They were changing every 3 plays. They were so out of shape, they couldn't stay on the field. This year, they're in really good condition. They've spent time. Give Philadelphia credit what they did. They changed how they practiced. They changed how they conditioned the team, and now they're better off for it. Philly did a great job this offseason of identifying why they lost, and they identified why they won. And so, therefore, they played within that, and they really have done a good job. They're in shape, and you can't wear them down. I mean, look, last week, if you'd have told me Jalen Hurts is going to throw for 118 yards and they're going to win, I would have said you're crazy. But they do it, and give Vic credit. Remember, when Vic left Miami, all the players said it was too hard to play for. They killed him. It's too hard. He's too hard on it. Philadelphia is embracing it because you know why? Hard wins. If you want to win a championship, it isn't easy.
We know how soft Miami is.
Whoa.
Easy, coach.
Yeah,
I saw the deal. It was on the.
Maybe Vic Fangio brought out too many air conditionings.
Could have been.
You know, he didn't store in practice, and it was just too cold in Fangio's meeting room. Maybe that was. Have we thought about that?
That's certainly
Maybe
possible.
Fangio keeps that thing down at like 52. He likes it chill. He likes to keep people alive in the meeting room, and the Dolphins players are like, it's too cold. It's too cold. McDaniel comes in.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Is that why Vic Fangio was hated down?
I think the players just thought he was an asshole.
Oh, okay. Well, he goes to Philly, does really well. And you talk about Hurts having 118 yards, them still getting a win. Over their 8-game win streak here, here's some notable wide receiver performances versus this Eagles defense, okay? Exciting watch in the boys. Mm-hmm. Jamar Chase, 54 yards on 38 routes. CeeDee Lamb, 21 yards on 26 routes. And Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, 10 yards on 25 routes against the Eagles. It's like, that's obviously the defensive line getting home, what you're talking about, but also the secondary and everybody being on.
4-man rush. They get home with 4 men. They can deploy 7 into coverage. Vic loves playing zone coverage. He gets a lot of bodies around everybody, eyes on the quarterback, breaking downhill. They're probably not playing as many snaps either because they're getting off the field, right, Lombo? So they can run. They're running the ball.
Look, the best way to play defense in the NFL is play less defense. That's the best way to play defense. And so when you run the ball as much as they do, they eat their clock up. That's why this game tonight, both teams will run the ball. This game tonight will be a 9-possession game. What? You know, they're not going to get many possessions when you run the ball and eat the clock off. And I think that's what makes Philly so good. And look, let's face it, they can throw it down the field when they have to throw it. And they don't play from behind. That's the thing. Even for a team that doesn't score, they got behind Baltimore 10-0. They were able to come back on it and dominate that game.
Yeah, even when they're behind, they still run. But also, you got A.J. Brown, you got Goddard, you got weapons.
Yeah.
Whenever you need it. And if you can run the ball, guess what that does to the box, Chuck?
Yep.
Makes it heavy. What does that mean on the outside?
One-on-one.
That's what we like. That's playoff football. Good for the Eagles. Will the Lions be able to remain as the number 1 seed in the NFC throughout the rest of the year with all their injuries? We shall see. Let's stay in the NFC North, shall we? Ty has a question for you, Lombo.
Yeah, Lombo. Just curious, what did you think of the whole Matt Eberflus no timeout deal on Thanksgiving? And then there was also a report that came out today, I think from Dan McNeil, that said Jim Harbaugh was interested in the Bears job, or at least talking to them in January, and Kevin Warren just kind of nixed that. I don't know if that's the Ohio State-Michigan deal. But are you confident that the Bears are going to make the right hire this upcoming cycle? Because we've been led to believe that Kevin Warren is going to have like a massive hand in hiring their next head coach.
Remember, Kevin Warren was deciding the feng shui of the suites in the new stadium on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Watching that.
Yeah, you can do that, and you can run a team. Look, Kevin Warren's running the team. Let's make no mistake about that. Okay, you can sit there and say that somebody else is, he is, and that story that was written about Jim Harbaugh is completely true. Now, remember, Warren and Harbaugh, Warren being the commissioner of the Big Ten, and Harbaugh had some differences, and I think it let it spill over. But there were 2 teams that Jim Harbaugh would have loved to work for, I'm sure, last year. The Bears, who he played for and was the number 1 pick for, and then the Las Vegas Raiders, who he worked for in his first coaching job. Neither team decided to go after him. Why, I don't know. To me, if you're Kevin Warren, the object of this is to get the best coach available. And Jim Harbaugh would have been the best coach for your team. Now, you would have had to fire Eberflus. Let's go back to the end of the game. If you read Caleb Williams' comments after the game, you know, what usually happens here, he signaled for a double move. When after the sack, right, they should have called timeout. Everything happens when you save timeouts in the NFL on a 2-minute drill because if you get sacked, you need them. because it takes too long for everybody to come back. Now, they wanted to run a stick route on the next play. Unfortunately, Caleb decided to change the play and throw a double move to Rome Odunze. You could see him signal it for here. He even said, look, later in my career, I probably would have tried to get the field goal, but I wanted to win the game for my teammates. This is really just hard. This is bad football, and it doesn't work. And ultimately, it falls in the hands of Eberflus, who got himself fired for this, and it falls in the hand of the quarterback, not recognizing you need to be in field position. I mean, even the Lions were stunned. They were completely stunned, and this, at the end of the game, is part of the issue, right? Situational football matters in December, and you just let an opportunity, and the quarterback even admitted that he would have done it. He did it. He changed the play, ran a double move. Now, that's on Eberflus, too, because if you would have called timeout before, right? If you'd have called timeout before, you come to the huddle, you come over to the sideline and say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick route. We're going to throw the ball to Kmet. I got the field goal rush team. They're ready to go right on the field. We're going to kick the field goal, get this game in overtime. Here's what we're going to do. Let's go do it. But they didn't do that. They let that time keep just dwindling off. Remember, never look at the clock during the 2-minute drill. It's how many plays are left in the game. The clock is not numbers, it's plays. And so when you go from 34 to 0, and you don't get 4 or 5 plays in that time, or at least maybe 3 plays, you've just given away the game.
Yeah, and obviously, once the plan was we're going to try to run that play at 18 seconds, I think he said.
Yep.
And then we're going to try to call a timeout. Well, once I get to 17, 16, and we don't have a play yet, obviously, that's when, you see the panic coach run timeout move happen a lot during an NFL season. I think there's a chance Eberflus is about done with it all.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance Eberflus was just pre-checked out. That's what he looked like.
Yeah.
On the sideline, he looked like he was just checked out.
Understandable.
So I don't want to say a relief to get fired from the situation, but potentially Eberflus is he knew what was inevitable, because it wasn't just that move. There's a lot of shit that has happened this year. One-score games, decisions that have been made, yada, yada, yada. Caleb saying maybe later in my career I'll do it differently. It's like,
yikes.
Let's worry about this year.
Yeah, try to win now.
Yeah, let's not worry about if you're going to be a 10-year quarterback,
quote,
which we hope you will.
You read that quote. That's not. They're going to have to bring somebody in that can coach him. And I think it's going to be. I think Thomas Brown's done a really good job the last couple of weeks of changing the offense. But they're going to have to do the defense. I think everybody says, well, Poles is definitely coming back, and Kevin Warren made it very clear. But this team is anti-Chicago. This team is built outside in, not inside out. You play in the Windy City, you got to be really good in the offensive defensive lines. They're not. You can't run Eberflus's scheme without great defensive linemen. We see it in San Francisco, same type of scheme. As good as San Francisco is, they can't win games because they don't have dominant defensive line, especially when Bosa's not in there. So it's a little bit of the Chicago problem isn't just coaching. It's a little bit of how the team was built as well.
Man, if let's say I was to end up being a coach or a GM somewhere.
Sure.
That O-line and D-line is right where you head.
O-line,
that is legitimately, that is the first, I think that is the first stop for any.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody says you need a quarterback. Sure. Doesn't matter who the hell your quarterback is if you don't have O-line in front of him. I legitimately, like you talk about Jim Harbaugh whenever he goes out to the Chargers, and he just lets the skill guys that are worth a lot of money go. And who's he hang on to? Well, the older, expensive guys that are on the O-line or the D-line. Like that is who and then they use their top 10 pick for offensive linemen. And then they go in again. It's like, Jim Harbaugh immediately, well, he has a quarterback already in Just Herbert, but he's like, this is where I'm focusing on. This is where we're going to be great. Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni's big takeaway about football because of his dad, and he told Howie, is what?
O-line, D-line, Howie, O-line, D-line.
So him in Philadelphia,
all that matters.
Legitimately, it is college ball, NFL ball,
it's
high
not
school.
going to change.
Every level.
But what happens at the draft is we get all these draft guys, and we got Mel over there sitting there too. It's all they talk about are receivers. They got 27 receivers going in the first. Got to have a receiver. I mean, that's Chicago's problem. They got Keenan Allen paying $22 million. They trade for DJ Moore. They draft Rome Odunze. I mean, look, it's great, but what wins games? The Eagles got Jalen Carter dumped in their lap. I mean, to find a 3 technique in the National Football League is like trying to hunt for dinosaurs. You can't find them. It's impossible. And they get one late in their lap at the 9th pick overall in the draft. And it's like, how long did it take them to turn that card in?
Yeah.
So it's just we have this mentality during football season. All we talk about, what wins the game, is offensive and defensive linemen. When we get to the draft, everybody talk about, well, we need guys to get the ball in the end zone. We need all this. We need all that. No, the game's won up front. Detroit, why do they win? The offensive line is dominant. right? Why does Cincinnati not win? They can't block. They can't run block. They can't control the game. Why is Philly good? They can control the game. I would add one more thing to you. The offensive line coach is one of the most important people in any organization. He should be one of the most highest paid coaches on the staff. He coaches 5 players, plus he's got to develop some young offensive linemen. If you don't have a good line coach, we learned this in Cleveland when Belichick and I were together. We did not have a good line coach. And all of a sudden, we hired Kirk Ferentz from University of Maine. Next thing you know, all of a sudden, we went from being the worst line in the league to being one of the best lines in the league because of Kirk. And he was such a great line coach, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Coach Ferentz, obviously Kirk's dogs help out everything. But hey, Ren Baker. Ren, you're doing a great job for us.
Hell yeah. Go,
Athletic Director of West Virginia. Ren, you're doing a great job. And I trust whoever you're going to pick. And you know that you have to make this pick right. And I'm not here to add any more pressure. I'm here to help out however you need and to let you know whenever people are looking for the gig. We should be talking to whoever says we want to commit to the offensive line and to the defensive line. Whoever, because there's enough quarterbacks in college.
Yeah.
If you have a good offensive line and you can find a quarterback that can fit in a scheme there. So Ren, if you could, there's no way he's listening right now. He's probably
have him text me. I'll help him, Pat. I'll help him. That's the most important thing. I'll volunteer.
This thing,
and it goes back over time. I mean, look, you can go through every team. It's how do you get control of the game? Why can't Miami win in late in the season? Everybody says it's the weather. I mean, Mike McDaniel's 5-12 in the last 7 games the last 3 years. They can't win because their offensive line never can get control of the game. Everything evolves around making sure that we've got to finesse our way on 3rd and 1. That's why if you can run the ball in the red zone, that's why it's really important to look at who runs the ball. I mean, Buffalo's run for 21 touchdowns in the red zone this year.
That's because Josh Allen
got 22.
Hey, Josh Allen is such a weapon down there.
He's great.
He's untackleable, but you got to account for him. And then they got James Cook and Davis that are able to cook off of that. It is I like your thought right there, though, because being able to run in the open grass, we hear from Coach Tomlin, which Tone is about to ask about, versus being able to run in the red zone. The red zone's like running in 4 minutes. They know you're trying to run it. It's tight quarters. It's going to be hard to try to run. Can you still run it when they know you're going to run it? Those are the teams that inevitably end up winning because they can end games, they can put people out, and they can control games. And that's why the top 5 performing offensive lines in the trenches with AQ Shipley, if you go back, I assume, from the beginning of the season, we'll be able to tell who is going to be the good teams and who's not going to be the good teams, seemingly.
That's right.
And now let's get an inside look every single week for the rest of the year with another season of Hard Knocks. Tone has a question for you, Lumbo.
Yeah, Lumbo, the first ever whole division in-season Hard Knocks kicked off on Tuesday night. What was your thoughts on it, and what was your takeaways?
Well, I love Tomlin. I mean, I could listen to Tomlin read his shopping list and feel motivated and ready to play. I mean, he's just tremendous. But I thought what he showed in that game, what he showed in that clip was showing the players what it was going to take to win the game and how to win the game and the respect for the opponent and what they needed to do. I think that's one of the most important meetings on Wednesday when the head coach stands in front of the team and goes over the points of emphasis for what has to happen on Sunday. Every Sunday you got to play a different game. You can't play the same game you played last week. And every Sunday presents a different challenge. What I said, Zach Taylor said, we're going to throw the ball against Pittsburgh and we're going to do something that other people. No, you're not beating Pittsburgh if you're going to throw it all the time because TJ Watt's going to do exactly what he did. He strip sacked him. So if you want to beat Pittsburgh, you're going to have to punch him in the mouth. You're going to show you can punch him. And that's why Cincinnati, as the game went on, what happens? Football's like boxing. The longer the fight goes, the person who has more strength and power wins the fight. That's what happened in that game. The longer it went, Pittsburgh wore you down. And you talk about soft, Cincinnati's soft. I'm not saying their players are soft. Their coaching and style of play is soft. So I think what it demonstrated is exactly what I thought it was. Pittsburgh's a tough-minded team. You got to give Arthur Smith a ton of credit. I think he's done a remarkable job of fixing the quarterback, fixing their offense, and then Tomlin just understands what it takes to win on Sunday. And the clip of him talking to Pickens about how we're going to need you later in the game is exactly why he's great.
Yeah, and I'll be excited to see how they continue to roll with it because Steelers were the only team to win in the whole division for that particular episode. So I think it wasn't as easy to show everybody, especially after losses, because NFL Films doesn't want to dunk on teams whenever they're losing or whatever the case is. So I'm going to need Tomlin every episode, though. I think
everyone.
Because sometimes with these Hard Knocks, they get creative.
They do.
And they start, bouncing around. It's like, hey.
But I think what Tomlin does a great job with, Pat, I think Tomlin takes the complex and makes it really simple. He boils it down to where the viewer and the players can see it perfectly. And that's the mark of a great leader. That's the mark of somebody who can take the complex and make it simple. And that's where he's so good. And he uses metaphors to do it, and he can drive home those points. And you could see the team was in perfect harmony with what he's saying. And the most important thing is, and Chuck knows this too, is does the team play the way the coach wants it to play?
Yeah.
Does the team have the personality of the head coach? See, this is what's happened to the NFL. We have too many guys calling plays that are head coaches. Their teams don't have a personality. Pittsburgh has one.
So does Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So does Philadelphia.
So does Detroit.
So does Baltimore.
Yeah.
I believe Baltimore has personality. They're trying to figure it out a little bit, though. Con Man's got a question for you.
Yeah, Lombo, what'd you think about Lamar's comments after the game? He said his mom cussed him out, saying that he's got to run a little bit more. There were some plays we were showing yesterday from AQ Shipley in the trenches that there were some lanes, but he's also trying to let routes develop for his guys so he can still sling the pill around. What do you think about Baltimore right now? And do you think their bye week is one of the best placed bye weeks in all of the NFL because of the fact that they can figure out what they need to do to close out this season, right?
Well, they gave up 7 points. I mean, Tucker's missed extra point in the 2 field goals. That hurts whenever you're playing in a game, and it hurts momentum. And I think that was a problem. Plus, they get penalized way too much. I think it's the perfect time for a bye for them. And look, Lamar's going to play better than he did in that game. Their offense has to play better. But I think what happens to them is sometimes in these games they get a little bit impatient. It didn't happen at the Charger game when they got behind. They were able to stay the course. But when teams take away what they do best and make them play left-handed, they can't have drop passes like they had. He had 2 great throws to Aguilar that were as good as any throw in the league. And, he just didn't, and Aguilar didn't make the catch. So, to me, that becomes a problem. I think, to me, Baltimore is still a team that I don't want to play because they are getting better defensively. And that's been the concern about them all year is, are they good enough defensively? Can they cover well enough? And I think we saw that they did a better job. They held them to 118 yards passing. I wouldn't give up on Baltimore yet. Now, maybe Pittsburgh's going to win the North, but Baltimore can come back. They've got to figure out this Tucker thing because John Harbaugh's right. There's not a better kicker on the street than Tucker right now. But they got to get his confidence back because I think if he goes out there in a game in January at 45 yards and it's windy, we're not as certain he's going to make it as we once were.
Yeah, I hope he battles through it mentally. But everything we're saying about this Baltimore team, and obviously Tucker has to get back right, and hopefully we'll see Lamar do Lamar shit because that's fun, and it feels like Lamar wants to do that, especially against the Giants coming up. That's fun.
Look out.
That's on, especially if Dexy's going to get him, Then here we go. We're off and running. They have a Ram truck in the backfield, too.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Patrick Ricard and Derrick Henry.
Couple diesel.
A couple 2,500 heavy duty.
That's right.
And whenever they decide to hit that gas pedal third, fourth quarter, it's a ram. All right, Lombo, last question here. Speaking of Ram trucks, I do believe there is a Colorado representative in the hashtag Ram truck competition today. Chuck has a question for you about that.
Hey, so let's pivot away from pro football to college football and the Colorado Buffaloes. Travis Hunter, put your GM hat on. Okay, Lombo, I don't know how much you've studied Travis at this point. I've spent the last week and a half watching him on both sides of the ball and breaking down mostly him as a defensive back. And this guy is a rare talent. I mean, he is a freak. He's got I think if you're going to go find the best shutdown man, press man corner in college football, it's him. I know he's electric on the offensive side. If you're picking, he's sitting there on the board, okay, and you're going to draft this kid. Are you drafting him as an offensive player or corner? Wide out of corner.
I'm going to draft him as a defensive player because he might score 5 touchdowns, intercepting passes. His hands are that good. He's never out of balance when you watch him play defense. The guy's always in position to catch the ball and defender. One of the things defensive backs have to have, everybody talks about vertical speed. Yeah, that's really important. But you have to have great balance to be able to change direction and not have wasted motion. And this kid does it effortlessly. It's really remarkable how good. And then let's add in his conditioning. He plays all the plays on offense. He plays all the plays on defense, and he never gets tired. And he plays just as good in the fourth quarter as he does in the first quarter. I mean, so to me, I'm going to play him on defense because I want to put him on whoever the second best receiver is on the team and just take him out, and I'll double the first one. But I think to me, the fact that he can make plays on the ball, that's the key. Most of the times the defensive backs drop passes instead of intercepting. And I think he could. We saw that with Bland last year for the Cowboys. He had 5 interceptions for touchdowns. That makes a huge difference in your team. It turns the game over. I think he's going to come in the league and play defense, and I don't think people are going to challenge him very often once you watch him on tape.
There'll be a package for offense, though, obviously. Sure. They'll have a couple
Probably harder. I agree.
We did that with Woodson, Chuck. Remember? We did that with Charles. Charles could have been that kind of player, too.
Absolutely.
Woodson was really good offensively and as a returner.
Don't you think it's harder to find cover corners like this dude than it is wide receivers right now?
I think it's the hardest thing to find because, everybody gets labeled you're a cover corner, and then they don't cover everybody. But this kid can cover anybody.
Yeah, he is. And you talked about his conditioning. It's not just like he's playing the same way and forth. He's a juice guy for the team.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He is a juice guy for the offense. He's a juice guy for the defense. He's a juice guy on the sideline. He's a juice guy in Selly's.
Oh, my God.
He is like a... Some building is going to get very, very lucky whenever he gets added into it.
I mean, in overtime against Baylor, he forced that fumble to win the game.
Tackle.
Yeah, and that was in overtime.
Perfect form, too.
Perfect.
Lower shoulder, head out of the side, right to the ball.
His instincts and reaction, he does play a little bit of zone. They play a little cover, too, and he has his eyes in the backfield, and he just feels routes.
He's so good, dude. And then he came up to game day at Penn State, and, obviously everybody wanted photos with him. He's super megastar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're getting a superstar who doesn't drink, doesn't smoke,
no
doesn't do anything,
flags
loves
whatsoever.
ball. What a genius. Hey, let's make sure we're happy for him, though, if we're around him.
Amen.
A lot of good things are taking place there. Let's make sure we're celebrating that. Hey, Lombo, quick pick, 10 seconds.
I like Green Bay tonight. I take the 3.5 on Green Bay tonight. I think it's a field goal game.
I think it's at 3 right now. Do you still like it?
I still like it. I like Green Bay. Matt LaFleur, I think he's 19-2 when he's a 3-point dog or less.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Michael Lombardi. Thank you.
Yeah.